This is Josh from The Verge, and we are live with Matias Duarte from Google and Android. And you guys have an announcement that you're making today. First off, are we live or is everything good, Chad? I just want to make... We're good? Okay, cool. You just kind of hurried over here. You guys are making an announcement today, and we're kind of getting first crack at it here. So what is it? What are you guys talking about? What's happening?
That's right. Today we are releasing this first style guide for Android ice cream sandwich. So today on the Android developer site, you'll find a blog post that describes what we've done, and you'll also find a link to Android Design, which is a document, but it's also a living site that's going to be your one-stop reference to find out how you can make beautiful, simple applications for ice cream sandwich.
So you haven't done this for earlier versions of Android? There's no...
We don't have an up-to-date style guide, and so our mission for ice cream sandwich was to make it beautiful, to make it simple, to make it powerful, and there's really three parts to that. One, we needed the OS, right? The OS and all the apps. That's a big part of it.
Right.
The other part was the framework. You know, it doesn't get noticed by people who buy the phones like Galaxy Nexus or who get the upgrade, but the framework itself has changed. The framework itself makes it much easier to make beautiful, simple apps. And the part that was missing until today is a guideline that tells developers how to use that framework, how to follow the patterns and new conventions that we introduced in Ice Cream Sandwich, how they can make stuff that is beautiful and simple and powerful using the new capabilities of Ice Cream Sandwich.
So you felt it was fairly necessary to start to say to developers, hey, you're doing great work, we like your apps, but if you could just make it a little bit more handsome, a little bit more beautiful, that would really be great. I mean, you're a designer. You clearly put a focus on design. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch. We did an interview months ago, and more recently on our show, we really focused on design. Ice Cream Sandwich is a big departure from the last version of Android for smartphones.
It's because it's such a big departure that it's so important to provide guidance. In fact, all designers crave guidance, right? You need to have constraints, and you need to know the environment that you're working in. Anytime you're doing a creative component that's part of a larger whole, like I'm sure The Verge has a style guide. Every publication
we
out
do
there
have
in
a
the world
style guide.
has a style guide.
Yeah, that is true.
Every platform in the world also has a style guide. So for Ice Cream Sandwich, we needed to have that style guide as well.
But you didn't. But you haven't up until this point have not had that style guide for the other versions. I mean,
no, we didn't.
That's pretty crazy, don't you think?
Well, that's why we have one now.
Is this something that you did? Is this like a mandate from? Is this a Matias mandate? Is that a thing? Can I TM that?
A Matias mandate?
Yeah.
I don't know. If I get a stamp for it, maybe.
Yeah. we'll get you a stamp.
I'm gonna get a little stamp, and then I'll start putting out some mandates. That sounds.
Maybe
really
you get a virtual, like a watermark.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough though, because I don't do anything.
You don't
hard
do a lot
copy.
of paper.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, was this something you said? I mean,
no. To my mind, like Ice Cream Sandwich as a release is not complete until we get this style guide out.
Right. So. And it's out today.
Yes.
So I can go get it. Developers can go get it. What are you going to do to ensure that people are following, that they're actually taking this stuff to heart? I mean, because it's one thing to put it out there. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to actually get people to say, oh yeah, my stuff has been really ugly. Let me fix it up. oh, I get it, Matias. I've been making ugly apps, and now I have to fix them up.
I think that's putting the wrong spin on it. It's not about people doing stuff that's ugly. It's about people not understanding what they should do, right? So there's plenty of times when it's important to break the rules, but you want to know that you're breaking the rules, right? It's one thing to be the audacious rebel who really knows what they're doing. It's another thing to turn down a one-way street because you just didn't notice that it was a one-way street.
Right.
So
the steering wheel's broken, basically.
Or just there was no sign.
Yeah.
Right.
Or there was no signage.
So this is really about telling people what the rules of the road are. You know, people, of course, are free to do whatever they want with it.
Right.
We're going to follow this up with a lot of evangelism, right? The first round of this is press, obviously, and CS is a great opportunity to do that, to get the word out that, that we have the design guidelines out, that we're engaging heavily, that we want to talk to designers and developers, and that this is just the beginning of these guidelines. Actually, we want to hear feedback from them. We want to know what more can we tell them, how more can we help them.
Right. Is this a reaction to your competition? I mean, Microsoft has made a big focus, has put a big focus on the design of Windows Phone. They've really talked about it quite a bit, and it's a beautiful product. I mean, I know you have your opinions of the, what did you call it, airport signage design. You don't want to repeat that, dude. I see you're getting very uncomfortable. I'm making you very uncomfortable right now, aren't I?
Well,
you don't have to answer that.
The spotlight.
The spotlight is
so hot.
But also, I mean, but Apple, clearly a design-focused company. iOS is a very design-focused operating system. Google has historically not been known for design. We talked about this a while ago. ICS, like I said, is very different. Is this in some way a reaction to what the competition is doing and how much emphasis they're putting on design?
I mean, if you want to be serious about design, you have to do this stuff, right? Ice Cream Sandwich is Android getting serious about design, and this is part of that.
Right. So we're actually taking questions from, we're supposed to be taking questions from people, and I don't know if this is not working or not because I don't see any. But we're grabbing questions, and we'll have some in a second. But one thing we have, while we wait for those to come in or I figure out, actually, hey guys, can I get, sorry, this is live. We kind of threw this together last minute because you sprung it on us that you had an announcement you want to talk about. Can somebody come in here and grab this iPad and, hold on one second, I'm sorry. Okay, good. And just get some questions. Yeah, whatever would be fine. That's great. Are we getting questions in?
I think so.
Okay, cool. But I actually want to ask you before we get into the questions. We've seen a lot of ICS tablets here at CES. There have been no ICS phones. Do you know what the holdup is? I mean, it seems like your partners are being very slow on the uptake of.
You know, honestly, I don't know. I haven't even really seen what's on the show floor. I've been so busy.
So you don't know that there are no ice cream sandwich phones here?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
I have like zero visibility right now into what's been announced and what hasn't been announced. Tablets, phones, anything.
Right. You're just here making the announcement, then back up north.
I have a few other meetings. But,
really? Wasn't it just that you're coming here to the trailer to have this interview and then you're leaving? That's what I was told. So I have a couple questions. Got this worked out.
Yes.
How does the style guide fit into the whole fragmentation story? Is it a first step to enforce a certain consistency? It's a pretty good question. So is this something that you guys are doing kind of to start to try to crack down on the fragmentation of not only platform but apps?
It's no secret that we hate it when people use the word fragmentation because it means so many different things to so many different people, and it's like a word that intrinsically is negative. It's like, you know, it's like what are you going to do about the beating your wife problem, right?
Yeah.
Like there's like.
Well, that also I'm concerned. Yeah. What is Google doing about the wife beating?
Actually, that one we're neglecting.
Yeah. Neglect, beating. I mean, it's very bad.
So people mean so many different things when they talk about fragmentation. One of the kinds of things that they might mean, this style guide is intended to address, and that's the way that applications work together, right? And the way that your experience in the operating system is kind of a cohesive, harmonious whole, right? The reason why you have style guides and the reason why you have conventions within an operating system is because, you know, everything works better together if they all follow certain standards, if they all follow certain practices, if things are where you expect them to be.
Right.
It's like when you buy a set of tools from one manufacturer, they all have a similar kind of grip, right? Whether they're tools for your kitchen or tools for your garage or whatever. So they tend to work better together. We want applications in Ice Cream Sandwich to take on the same benefits and the same attributes of the new applications that we launched in Ice Cream Sandwich.
Right.
So we want to show developers how they can do that, exactly what they have to do, what metrics they have to follow, what patterns they can utilize, what new tools we've given them that they might not have realized, what things we've learned from the past that maybe didn't work so well that had been a convention,
right,
that we're now saying, you know, maybe you should think about staying away from that.
Do you have, is that, I mean, it sounds to me like you're saying everybody wants to do things, or thinks, you know, when they're working on their app, maybe they have an idea for how you get to from point A to point B, and there are some basic, there's some basic functionality you want people to gather around, sort of standardized. You know, here's where your menu should be. Here's where your back, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have a back button because you've got a back button, but you know, here's how you get somebody from this screen to that screen. I mean, I know that you guys have instituted in Ice Cream Sandwich this kind of panel. What do you call it? What you swiping from?
The view pager.
The view pager.
That's the API.
Can you sex that up a little bit?
I didn't name.
But
the
you've
API.
got this motif of swiping through layers of an application.
The horizontal swiping.
Right, like in the People app, for instance, you've got
That's right.
your dialer.
So we have a section
and
in our
your
style
list
guide that talks about the pattern of when you should use that, when that's appropriate. What kinds of screens is that appropriate to use it for?
Right.
What kinds of screens, what kinds of limits should you be aware of when you're using that?
Right.
For certain applications, we work very hard to make sure that you never swipe further than 3 screens away.
Well, I've noticed is it 3? Is that what you're trying to box it to?
But not always, right? So we do that very deliberately in the phone app and the People app. But you'll notice in Market, we actually have a much wider swath of swiping. And it all has to do with understanding what is the use case of the user in that application.
Right.
So the style guide starts to give you that guidance, starts to give you the heuristics that lets you know, okay, if this is an application that I'm using a lot and I'm really jumping between these 3 different states a lot, or these multiple states a lot, probably 3 is about the limit.
Right.
But if it's an application where this is really intended to encourage exploration and browsing, and it's not about I always want to get to one place really quickly, then it's okay to go broader.
Like in Google Reader, Google Reader and Gmail,
or
you have a constant swipe.
Or music as well.
Right, you're swiping further. I mean, really, it's actually less of you're moving between panels in something like Reader, and you're just simply reading.
Yes.
Right. So it has dual use, that functionality, but you want people to understand that because obviously it's not something that's built in. I mean, what's interesting about that is there's one app which is TweetDeck, which is a Twitter app that I use that had that functionality for a long time. It was the only one really until you guys brought it to market. Was that an influence at all? I mean, it was fairly unique when they did.
I'm actually not familiar with TweetDeck.
Are you kidding me?
No, not kidding you.
It's probably the best Twitter app.
I use the native Twitter client. The horizontal swiping was basically born in the launcher of the original Android OS,
right.
And then it was a pattern that was really first brought into our apps in the music app.
Right.
You just think it's
a really
that was like around the Froyo release. But it's a terrific pattern because it's a way to navigate that's much more engaging than pressing a button and waiting.
Right. I mean, you just think
having
it's more
the ability
natural
to just kind of swipe between these spaces is really satisfying.
Right.
And it's also a great way to segment information because it naturally snaps to those pages. It's not like when you have a vertical scroll where you want to get to the next page. Well, it doesn't scroll by page, so you're always in that like, okay, like when you're in email,
list.
You don't have that same kind of confidence. You just can't kind of swipe it and then know that you're going to get exactly to that next set of content you want to read.
Right.
Right.
You're a big fan of swiping.
Yes.
You did swiping in WebOS with the cards.
Yeah, these things that people call gestures, these manipulations on the screen, are much more satisfying to people than this cycle of you press, you release, and then you wait and see what happens.
Right.
Right. It's tied much more into the way that the real world works. Right. Like our brains are wired for this. We see rocks, we bang them together,
actually
we push them around.
I mean, you can actually reveal information as you're swiping. I mean, one of the things I noticed that you do it in the launcher is as you start to swipe over to the next screen in the launcher, you start to see the information coming in from.
That's right.
And you can say, hey, you know what, I'm halfway through this motion, I don't want to go there.
Exactly.
Whereas like pressing the button and having it load up is like you're locked into that.
Yeah.
It is true that
you
there is
get
something.
Immediate feedback. You feel much more in control because, as you say, if for whatever reason you realize that that's not what you want, you can cancel it. Now you almost never do that, but it doesn't matter. It still gives you a greater sense of control.
So you mentioned that you use the native Twitter app. Are you going to go to Twitter and say, here's what ice cream sandwich looks like, here's the way it works? Because right now, Twitter is basically, they have an iOS version, they have an Android version, they have a web version, they're all kind of the same. But ICS has design and functionality paradigms.
That's a great question. This style guide is exactly for that. It's for people like Twitter to show them, like, these are the basics of making an ice cream sandwich app really as good an ice cream sandwich app as it can be.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want applications to have their own strong brand and their own strong design conventions. In fact, we want them to.
Right.
I think it's actually a real problem if an application's brand is so closely tied to one platform that it looks like that one platform's set of buttons or widgets on every other platform, because that means you're not doing a service to your own brand.
Right.
Right. You're tying your brand to somebody else's brand. Right.
Right. You're getting homogenized
on the web.
That,
right. You'd never see that. Right. You wouldn't see like, hey, here's the Verge with buttons that we took these buttons from Chrome.
Right.
Like on the web, you'd customize your own buttons.
But you do want some navigational. I mean, this is the whole point, because you want to balance that. I mean, you want Twitter to be Twitter. But I think it would be your. I mean, I'm assuming it would be your preference that they utilize some of the motifs of ice cream sandwich, like the panel swiping or the, what do you call it, view pager?
Yeah, the view pager is a technical
terrible name.
It is. Just call it panel swiping.
Yeah, panel swiping.
That's page swiping is the way I call it. But again, the trick is what are the elements that are natural and native to the platform? Like there's two parts to this. There's the, this is the toolkit that this platform utilizes. You can pick and choose from it, but you should be aware of all the things that are on this menu. Right. And that's one of the functions of Style Guide.
And you're making
some people might not know about the view paging capability or how to use it or when to use it. Right. The other part of it is like, these are some of the conventions that make this platform feel cohesive, right? These are the metrics, these are the sizes, these are the corner radii, these are the conventions for how icons use.
Right.
You don't have to follow them, but if you don't, your application is going to stand out. It's not going to look like, it's not going to be branded necessarily. If it's standing out because it's branding towards your property, if it's branded towards the Verge, then that's an okay kind of standing out. But if it's standing out because you just copied those elements from some other platform, that's not doing you any favors.
So Twitter is a place where you'll want to target getting some of this feel in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All third parties, we want them to take a look at this.
You might have to. You're going to have to work extra hard at your relationship with Twitter right now. I think there's a little sensitivity there. So I have a couple of other questions. Actually, we're getting a bunch of questions, and
sure.
I think I know the answer to this one. Are developers going to be required to adhere to these style guidelines, or are they just suggestions?
They're guidelines.
They're guidelines.
They're guidelines.
You're not forcing anybody to do it.
I mean, this is the way it is for every platform, right? The human interface guidelines tend to be very high-level guidelines, and what happens, and we've seen this on every platform, is that the value of them accrues as more people use them. So really the market pressures will make the applications that work the way people expect the ones that are more successful.
Those are going to rise to the top. Here's a question, and I think this is an interesting one. Will you also provide working code snippets, utility classes, optimization tips and such? Because UI inconsistencies, devs need a standard way to do common stuff like an endless adapter for getting data from web services. So are you going to provide kind of packages, like plug and play packages?
Right now, Android design is almost entirely focused on explaining the design patterns and providing tools purely for the designers, and it's linked with some examples back to the developer site, but we're going to continue to build this out very closely with the developers site so that everything that we're talking about becomes as easy as possible for people to do. We've actually done a lot of work already in the framework for Ice Cream Sandwich to make it easier by default when you just instantiate a bunch of stuff to have it conform to these guidelines.
Interesting. I have a question here. I think I know the answer to this one too, but I'll ask it anyhow. Is this something you think should have been done early on in Android? I mean, had you been at the helm from version 1, would you have instituted this? Is this, I guess maybe, and maybe to extrapolate from the question that we got here, is this something that is just sort of important to an operating system of this scale and needs to be there no matter what?
Every platform needs to have this. But I can't cast blame on a platform for not having up-to-date versions of this throughout the past. I've been in the position where platforms I've worked on haven't had this when we launch either. It's very hard. The Android team is extremely talented, but also extremely small. And I know not just from working at Android, but working at other companies, what a challenge.
You've been in a lot with small teams. That's kind of your thing.
A operating system from scratch. And even though this is absolutely essential, it's really hard to do. It's really hard to find the time. I would have loved to have done this in the Gingerbread timeframe. I'd have loved to have done this in the Honeycomb timeframe. It just couldn't happen.
Do it.
And it didn't make sense to either because we'd have to revise so much of it for Ice Cream Sandwich.
So
now that we're here, I'm really happy to have it.
You're doing it. You got Roboto, you've got a Style Guide. It's all of a sudden it's a different Android. Okay, but so what does this mean for Sense and TouchWiz and MotoBlur and all of these skins? I mean, these. So you're telling developers, hang on one second. Hey, can somebody crack this door? By the way, it is just 1 billion degrees in here. I mean, I'm dying.
I thought this was just.
I might actually no.
This is the interrogation.
No, it's hot as hell in here.
I
apologize.
Right?
This room gets very warm. Do you need any water or anything? You want some water? Do you have something?
Yeah, I would love something cold.
Bring
with
some
ice.
cold water. Something with ice in it.
Please.
This is like, it really is like I'm interrogating you.
Well, this is an interesting contrast.
Tell me the truth, Matias.
From last year, where I believe you tried to freeze me to death.
That is, you know what? I'm trying to just both extremes, see which one is more effective in getting answers out of you. So what happens? You're telling developers to do something very stringent. I mean, you're asking them to do something very stringent. You're saying, we have design guidelines, we've got a style guide here, and yet, just walk it over.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you so
I'll take one of those too, Michael. Thank you. You jerk. How do you balance that? Because here you're going to have TouchWiz come along and throw out a bunch of ice cream sandwich stuff.
Well, there's actually two questions there. First of all, it's kind of a misconception to think that this is really something that's very stringent, right, for a designer. That might be the impression, for somebody who's not a designer. It might be the impression, oh my gosh, a guideline, that's a constraint. That sounds like something terrible.
Right.
Actually, all designers want this. I mean, designers more than anybody else have been clamoring to understand what are our conventions, what is our style guide, what are our metrics, what's the grid, how should I design an icon, how do I make it consistent, right? People want this stuff.
No, I mean, when
so
we got our style guide, our developers were saying, they wanted more information. They said, what about this? What are these grids? I mean, it's clearly you need that guidance.
I mean, I actually feel bad about the version that we're publishing today. It doesn't have enough detail. It doesn't have enough examples, right? So we're going to be continually adding to that, right? So it's not actually, there's no tension between providing constraint and liberating people to customize stuff.
Right.
And that's actually the answer for OEMs who want to customize stuff, right? So this is a great resource for third parties who want to build stuff that's consistent with the system. There's also a tool now that OEMs can understand exactly how ice cream sandwich is put together, so that when they do expansions to it, when they do customizations, when they are porting whatever layer of modification they want to it, it can be coherent and consistent with the system as much as they want it to be. Right? It's not going to feel like there's a part of it that was customized and a part of it that wasn't customized. They now should have the tools to make their customizations really seamless without having to do everything, right?
So
which should be a boon to them.
So just so I'm understanding what you're saying completely, this style guide is not just for app developers, but it also applies to the partners that you work with who do skinning, or what did you call them, expansions? Customizations. You're saying this will give you a guideline on how to do that so that it actually works with what we wanted to do with ice cream sandwich.
Yeah, for example, like we talk about the metrics of things, the sizes of buttons, the height of the action bar, how the action bar should work. And so that applies for whether an OEM, for example, is customizing the launcher and wants to use the action bar patterns in the launcher, wants to use icon grids that are consistent with the icon grids everywhere else. Or if they're trying to create a custom skin for it, if you will, that make all the buttons look different, like a different material or have a different character. When they do that, they can see that they're going to conform to the metrics of the other ice cream sandwich elements. They can understand exactly what the corner radii or lack of radii are, so that they can make those decisions. Do I want to modify that? How much do I want to modify that so that it's consistent with everything else?
Have you shown this to any of the partners like HTC or Samsung and said,
no, we're announcing it. We're releasing this
everybody's
to everybody
getting it for the first
all
time.
at the same time.
So right now there are guys from Samsung going, oh crap. We gotta rethink our ICS skin that we've been working on.
Hopefully now there's a bunch of guys from Samsung that are saying, oh,
finally.
Now I understand why the heck they did this.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's the case. Here's another question from the viewers. How does this affect backwards compatibility for applications? Will the tools and guidelines work properly on old versions of Android? I'm guessing this is I don't want to answer for you, but you tell me.
Well, the style guide is for ice cream sandwich. Unfortunately, we don't have a style guide for each previous version of it. We do have a section that gives advice on how you can adapt our best thinking patterns to previous versions of Android, which patterns we think are appropriate and which stylistic choices we think are appropriate that you should start using regardless of which version of Android you want to run on, and which things you want to be aware of might really only work inside Ice Cream Sandwich.
Right. So in terms of tablets and phones moving into Ice Cream Sandwich territory for app developers, and this is a question here, how are you handling different size screens? Are you? I mean, we've seen a lot of apps that kind of just scale up to a larger screen and just show you basically more empty space. What do you advocate for that? I mean, what is the this?
Well, so that's exactly one of the reasons why I have the style guide now. Now we have a section that talks about adapting to different size screens and what are some of the common patterns that you can utilize when you detect that you're a larger screen.
Right.
So in Honeycomb, we actually did a lot of exploration. We came up with a large number of different multi-panel or multi-pane layouts. But we didn't explain to anybody why we did them, how we chose them, what cases they would be appropriate, what cases they wouldn't be appropriate. We didn't give guidance as to what heuristics you should use to determine when your app should stop using a phone type UI to one of these multi-panel type UIs. Now we have sections in the guide that start to explain that. And again, we're going to flesh them out with more and more detail.
So that's going to help ease the transition between. I think if I'm making an app and I want it to be, be in both places, this style guide is going to be.
The idea is that we've done a lot of this work, and so we want to share the work that we've done so that other people can benefit from it.
Right.
Doesn't mean that people have to make the same decisions that we did, but they can at least understand the decisions that we did and don't have to repeat the same work that we did.
So somebody, and I know you have to get going in a little bit, so we'll do a couple more questions, then wrap it up. And I also know that you're going to melt if you stay in here. You have a cold right now, right? Are you sick?
Actually, I think this completely.
Is this just drying you out?
This sauna type environment, I think, is very good for the.
We try to present like a a healing thing here. So somebody actually said, and I'm gonna jump off of their question a little bit, but they said, when do you think the design quality of Android apps will reach parity with iOS? But I want to go a little bit further and say, I don't think that Android apps. I think that there are some great Android apps, but I think across the board, if you look at percentages of really high quality, smooth, beautiful apps. That do a lot. I think that there are some holes in Android and some places where iOS is just kicking your ass, frankly. I know. I mean, really. I mean, I hate to say it because I love your device. I like iOS. I like what you guys do. I mean, I'm a fan of both things. But when I see an app like GarageBand, which is an Apple-developed app, incredibly powerful, I haven't seen anything that couldn't even come close on any of your devices. When are you going to get there? When are you going to say, like, we can go toe-to-toe on something as complex and as beautiful and as functional as GarageBand? Because to me, that's the high watermark for an iOS app, personally. Can you do it? Will you do it? Is it this generation? I mean,
well, so I can't predict the future. I don't know what apps are out there. But I do know that in order to do it, this type of guidance is absolutely essential, right?
Right.
I believe that we're going to continue to push the platform, and in Ice Cream Sandwich, we've pushed the platform a long way to enabling these types of experiences. And the style guide goes a long way to letting developers know how to create these kinds of experiences.
Right.
One of the things I hope that the style guide does is expand the conversation beyond just the people who normally pay attention to Android, but to all those other brilliant designers out there who would like to create beautiful apps, but have maybe been turned off by the fact that Android didn't have this kind of guidance, didn't give them a framework, didn't give them a context that they could understand.
So you think that you'll be able to bring some of these, maybe people who've been standoffish about maybe coming over, porting something from iOS to Android to say, like, look, we're taking this seriously. We've got design guidelines. This is a framework you can fit your app into. Take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Are you going to ding people who don't follow these guidelines? I mean, are you going to?
Personally, I'm going to take a little hammer and go just ding their car.
No, but are you going to pull people aside? I mean, can you do that? I know you guys are all about being open, but the store, you can kind of put whatever you want in there into the Android market. But will you, or even give users a way to say, hey, this app doesn't fall in the guidelines, and it's making it harder to use?
Well, comments. Already provide.
But are you guys scouting the comments?
Reviews also provide. I'm sorry, not reviews. The ratings also provide a mechanism for that, and we hope that the community will become more sensitive to the patterns, will understand the guidelines, will help us do that kind of thing. I personally would like to see more positive incentives, right? So that we could extend a hand of friendship to developers who wanted, personal attention in understanding the guidelines and understanding how they could take better advantage of them.
What is positive encouragement there? Like, what do you?
We could I don't know. I haven't even thought of it, but there could be
Just
things.
making this up right now.
I am. I'm completely winging this.
You announced here, forthcoming positive encouragement for developers on how to make their apps better.
But I mean, we could do, if we work with people, we could endorse them in various different ways. We could promote them in blog posts. We could promote them in the market, right? I see there's lots of potential positive mechanisms, which I'm a lot more excited about than negative mechanisms. We don't have any concrete plans for any of those things, which is why I sound so vague and uncomfortable about it.
Right. No, I get that, but I'm just curious. I mean, Apple polices its store. It says we'll let this in, we won't let this in, and I think that it has its pluses and its minuses. But
But Apple and other store makers also, one of the other things they do, which I think is much more impactful, is that they promote the really outstanding citizens.
Right, and you're saying if something's really good, we want to put it on the front page of the market. Yeah. So that's the positive reinforcement. But you're not going to be looking at people's apps and saying, hey, we noticed. I mean, do you guys do this? Hey, we noticed you're not using the guidelines and we think the app would be improved. I mean, is that something that you may consider doing?
We don't want to get involved into that kind of regulation of the market.
It would be somewhat helpful, though. I'm not even saying like you can't have it in here, but just as extending a hand.
What I'd be delighted to do is offer some kind of workshops or office hours or some kind of model like that, where developers who want feedback or critique, we'd be happy to give it to them.
Right. I mean, I think you. But
I wouldn't want to do that as part of a punitive measure inside the market. I don't think that would be fair to what the market is supposed to be.
Right. No, I agree. 2 more questions, then I'll let you go because you have a trip back to a hotel. This is my question. It's very personal, but you've got this limitation where if I download a game and it's a big game, 600 megs or something, I get a little file that I download. It's a couple megs, and then it says I open the app and there's another screen that says you have to download this big file, and it's a totally siloed, company specific way of getting that file. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What's going on? Like when I download a game from the App Store on my iPhone, it just downloads the game, and when it's finished, I play the game. With you guys, I download the game. It asks me to download another file. Sometimes it works or it doesn't. I just got a game and it took me 6 tries to download the rest of the files.
Oh, that's terrible.
Well, this is I think it was a GameLoft title. I mean, it's a major developer. It was the new Nova 2 HD or something. What are you doing about that? Are you going to get rid of this limitation where you can? So
I have to look like a fool because I actually don't know the specifics of that.
Right. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
I actually don't. There's a lot of stuff that we work on. This is a topic I'm tangentially familiar with, but I don't know actually what we're doing, what we've announced that we're doing. I don't know what the actual state of play of things is right now, so I can't really comment.
Right.
But what I can say is all of these kinds of annoyances, all of these pain points in the market are things that we take really, really seriously. They're part of the growing pains of the market.
Right. Oh, you changed the market a lot in the last few months. Like the last 6 months has been a sea change for the way you guys are moving.
And that's not slowing down. We recognize that there's still quite a lot we have to do to really kind of fulfill the promise of what market is as a one-stop destination for all of your media and entertainment.
Right.
And so we're going to keep doing that.
Well. Have the redesigns and implementing some of this ICS feel into the market? Has it changed sales? Has it changed the way people are getting apps and using apps? I mean, have you seen any? Can you talk about that?
I actually don't know, and if I did, I probably couldn't talk about it.
Right. That's great. Okay.
But I do know that Android market numbers and downloads are just rising continuously. It's like one of those cheesy hockey stick graph things that but it keeps growing and growing. I don't know. You can get the numbers from our PR
so modest.
people.
Oh, it's a hockey stick. It's just shooting up.
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous.
But it's not an upside down hockey stick.
No.
It's a right side of hockey stick. A final question. Somebody wanted to know what the design guidelines of your shirt were, and I'm actually curious too. You always have some pretty intense outfits. I mean, you're kind of a stylish dude. What is going on with your shirt? It's actually, I don't know if you guys can see this on camera, but it's like, it almost looks like it's a machine generated art. Is this just a random shirt you found somewhere? Is there a story behind it?
There's no story behind it.
You didn't think you were going to be asked about your shirt today,
It's just a shirt that I thought was beautiful, and I like
it. Actually looks like a fractal in some way, like a weird.
Yeah, it has. What I like about it is it's got this very geometric detailed pattern if you actually get up close to it.
Yeah.
But from a distance, it's just this kind of cloudy, wintry.
That's what I'm guessing.
effect.
That's what they can see on camera.
Yeah,
but
I don't think
there's
they can
actually
see
like triangles and squares and circles in here, and it's quite beautiful. Anyhow, Matias, thank you so much for joining us.
My
Thanks
pleasure,
for
as
sharing
always.
the announcement with us, and I think I'm going to want to talk to you more in the near future.
My pleasure, always.
And thanks to the people asking questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. But
yes, thank you, everybody. Please head over to Android Design and give us feedback and go make awesome stuff.
Yeah, please make beautiful applications. Ice Cream Sandwich deserves it.
Yes.
In my opinion. All right, thanks.